Welcome to the 21st Century Writer, a podcast devoted to helping you to establish the mindset and techniques and resources and background and whatever we think of, which will allow you and your writing to flourish in the new world of self-publishing. I'm Hannah Steenbach, an author, creativity coach, and EFT practitioner, and my partner in crime is...
I'm Diane Patterson, an author and entrepreneur living out here in California. And today's episode is about...
I need to look at my cheat sheet. It's about the importance of finishing what you're writing, about perfectionism, and why NaNoWriMo may be the best thing since sliced bread, at least for developing the finishing muscle. And I'm also going to talk a little more about the plot whisperer. And at the end of the podcast, I'll do some EFT tapping. And that means if you're listening to the audio, maybe you want to switch over to the video because it's easier to follow when you're actually watching me doing that stuff. But anyway, first we're going to talk about what's been up with us for the week.
Yes.
So go ahead.
This has not been my most successful week. I've done some writing. Something else came up in the meantime. We had some illness around the house.
Oh, no.
Yeah, I know. And that's just one of the things that you have to deal with.
It's life.
Yes. And this episode will be really good for me because every time I think I'm coming close to finishing, something else comes up. And I'm like, no, I have to fix X, Y, and Z before I do anything. So I think this episode is going to be useful for me.
Yeah.
So not my most successful week, but it's okay. That's why we show up and talk to other people to get feedback and support. So how about you?
It's really funny that you mentioned something else coming up when you're this close to finishing a story. Happened to me. This week hasn't really been that successful either. I still haven't finished a novella that I wanted to have done at the beginning of this month. But I'm coming close, and I just had my mind hijacked by a silly TV series yesterday, and I couldn't really sleep, and I couldn't really stop thinking about them. So I wrote a little fan fiction this morning just to write.
Oh, this was the TV series you're watching, not one you...
No, it's not one I'm writing. It's one that I'm watching. I'm not a screenwriter. Sometimes I wish I were, because I think I could think up quite interesting episodes. And I like to visualize. I like to see images. I often see scenes in my mind, and sometimes they really play out like a TV scene with cuts and shifts and all that. But so anyway, I wrote some in my novella this morning, and then I used downtime at work to write a little bit of fan fiction because I needed to get it out of my brain.
So do you find that new stories, new things occur to you a lot while you're trying to finish something?
That is actually a good question. I can't really say that this novella feels like finishing because it's part of a series, and the next one is the one that kind of finishes the story arc, so it doesn't feel very much like finishing. I think, and this really leads over very nicely. I think that if you're having trouble finishing something, it can mean a lot of different things, but there's 2-3 things that really need to be looked at. And one of them could be that there's actually something wrong with the story, that the writing intuition actually tells you, hang on, there's something missing, take a closer look. Maybe the end isn't working, maybe you left out something. And that is a warning signal I've only recently come to really notice and follow through on. And the other thing could be that you're really kind of scared of finishing.
I find that yes, as you start to finish things, every other idea you've ever had starts looking way more attractive, and you start. Certainly, I wouldn't say that I am beset by millions of ideas every day, but boy, when I'm finishing a project, I am an idea factory. Suddenly, I have thousands of ideas I want to work on, and I think it's all part of the same um, fear that we go through as we're finishing something. Um,
Yes.
uh, Not everyone has trouble with finishing things, but a lot of us do. A lot of writers do. And the new and shiny always looks better than what we're working on. And there's a very good reason for that. And that is perfectionism. Uh,
Oh,
the that which doesn't yet exist is always more perfect than what we actually have in real life. I have written a lot of completely perfect novels, and not one of them has ever appeared on paper.
mm.
The second you start writing stuff down, it's like, oh, wait, that isn't exactly how I wanted that to happen, or that's messy. I have to fix that. In our head, it always works out perfectly.
Yes.
Yeah. So
So
a
do you think
lot.
it's really perfectionism, or is it also this thing of letting it go? I mean, it's like,
I think that's the same thing. I think it's the same.
okay, yeah,
Perfectionism is uh, as many people, and I will put these in the show notes, but I can't recommend these books highly enough, by Brene Brown, who describes herself as a shame researcher. Perfectionism is how we act out feelings of shame in our day-to-day life. If we're perfectionists, if we're going to work on it until it is completely perfect, uh, we're never going to be done, and no one will ever see it, and no one can ever shame us for having something that is less than perfect.
yes, and we can always find more things to polish.
You you can keep working on things, and people, I know lots of people who keep working on books way past their sell by date. I've done it. Um, you run into this certainly in Los Angeles, where people are going to work on screenplays until they're perfect. And I'm like, work on 10 more screenplays instead. You're going to learn a lot more from each one of those screenplays than you are from spending 10 more minutes on that one. And
Yes.
it's hard because we want to do the best that we can, and we want to, we don't want to put crap out there. But there comes a time where it's like, B plus, good enough, on to the next project. Um, it's also something else happens, and I know I did this for years, which is I would work 2/3 of the way through something and I would say, you know what? The next project will be better. So I'm just going to put this aside and start working on the new one. And then I'd work on the new one and I'd get through it 2/3 and I'd say, you know what? What I should go do is, and what I developed was a habit of working on things 2/3 of the way through and then dropping it and moving on to something else.
Yeah.
And that's almost just as dangerous as working on the same thing until it's perfect.
Well, putting on my coaching hat, that
Yes,
is a pattern. I mean,
I agree.
you have it, and I'm pretty sure a lot of other writers have it. This pattern of working until a specific point, and I mean, if you're stuck in the middle, that's so common. Being stuck in the middle, going back to the three act structure, beginning, middle, and end. Being stuck in the middle is just what
Yeah.
happens.
That's a
But
day ends and why.
but putting on my coaching hat here is this is a safety pattern.
Mhm.
We all develop patterns that keep us safe, that keep us from feeling shame, from being judged, from putting us out there, from being visible. And being visible is one of those things that writers really fear because we tend to be introverts. We tend to love working on our own. We tend to love avoid people, especially people we don't know or huge groups of people. And I mean, putting your novel out on Amazon is basically taking off your clothes.
Yeah.
Anyway, so these patterns of not finishing, and regardless which kind of pattern you've developed, you listener, wonderful viewer, all of us develop this kind of patterns. It's the subconscious protecting us from things that we fear. And so this pattern is not evil or bad per se. It's just something our great mind comes up with to protect us. And I've used EFT to release a lot of those patterns because there's a fear underneath it. And if we can release the fear, we can transform the pattern. And the fear is very often in finishing. There's a whole mess of fears, but one of those fears is, oh my goodness, I finished. I have to show it to the world now. Um, People will judge my story and me. That's the thing we always confuse. A reader can really truly only judge a book. They can't really judge the author as a person. But it's a very common fear. And so if you develop that habit of stopping 2/3 through and moving on to something else with this is going to be really hard. It's not an excuse, but it's sort of the reason you gave yourself for doing this.
Mm-hmm.
Because the new project was going to be so much better.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
But it is simply a holding pattern. It is a pattern of keeping you safe. And letting go of that pattern and the fear underneath it is certainly going to ramp up productivity of everyone who's listening to this podcast. So I will focus on that in the tapping round, which will happen in about half an hour. And until then, we can talk about tactics, because habit can always be unchanged. Habit can always be recreated in a different shape, in a way that's productive. So if you're stuck in the middle of a project or in 2/3 of a project and you're thinking, oh, this sucks, I want to do something else, I'm so tired of these people, I don't know how to finish this anyway, and I have this brilliant new idea. One way of doing this, and I'm going to give you another visual cue here because I'm going to show you my little project, my big project thing. I have this beautiful, and I bought this on purpose, and I made it beautiful on purpose. It's this notebook, and it has this awesome magnetic flip to open it. And I have a few things in there. What I do is I create. I hope you can see that. I just write everything down for a project.
I can't read it, but yeah.
That's okay. It's probably in German anyway.
I might be able to read some of that, but
it is actually in German, indeed.
Yeah. And what is this?
This is my ideas and project notebook. And when I get hit by one of those wild ideas, I give myself an hour or two to just write down everything in my mind about that story or that project or idea, whatever. I'm probably a visual person. I use beautiful. Don't ever let me into an office store with a lot of money to spend.
Oh
I
yeah.
use a lot of beautiful pens. And
only good thing about all the stationery stores closing is that I can no longer spend my children's inheritance in them. I wish I could put the camera around and I would show you the stack of really beautiful writing books that I've bought over the years that I will never ever be able to fill. But yes.
So that's what I do. When this idea really hits me, I either grab that ideas thing or I'll just open a file on my computer, maybe even a Scrivener file, and I just dump. I just dump my brain into it,
Well,
and I give myself an hour or maybe two, and then I get back to the part that I need to do,
well,
and it feels
something I've discovered with those ideas that pop up at the 2/3 mark, is that when I start writing them down, and I do that too, I'm like, okay, I'll take you seriously enough to write down the general gist, and then I need to get back
yeah,
to this other project.
exactly.
I find they're not quite as developed as they think they are. I get through the shiny part very quickly, and then it's like, now what? And it's like, well, I don't know, start writing me and find out. And it's like, no, I'm going to need more than that before I stop what I'm doing.
Wait
And
your
it is
turn.
just shiny and not very substantial because that takes work.
Yes,
So,
but I mean, I really think it is quite possible to have more than one project at the same time. I don't usually do that, but sometimes I do that. I write two different stories, or I bounce between stories. I've done that. Um, I'm not really doing that any longer because I don't know. Probably getting older makes it harder for me to switch.
yes and no. In fact, I've just been reading a book, one of many, I'm sure, but in this case, it's The Organized Mind by Daniel Levitin, I think is his name. And God, it's really long-winded and pedantic. But one of the things he talks about is um, topic switching in our head. There is a cost to it.
Yes.
So, if we stay on one topic, we get 100 units out of it. If we switch to two topics, each one doesn't get 50, each one gets 40, and then there's a cost of switching between the two of them.
Yes.
Um, so I
This
think
is
I
the
think you really, and this is why multitasking doesn't work. People, you all know that, right? You can't multitask, right? Okay. No such thing as multitasking. Turn
I
off
think I
your
have the
bells and whistles
opposite.
and focus.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I don't subscribe to multitasking. Um, Sort of like doing two things at the same time. But this is something I took from Barbara Scher, and you're probably familiar with her.
Wait, say,
She has
wait, say that again.
Barbara Scher,
Yeah. Okay.
and she has a lot of books about people who have many divergent interests. She calls them scanners. And scanners might be into writing, into photography, into, I don't know, knitting, painting, whatever, usually very creative people. And they have various projects, and they need just to stay engaged. They need to switch from project to project, but they don't do it by the minute. They do it by days or weeks, and I think that works. If you sort of plan your day and you decide in the morning, okay, today I'm going to spend most of my creative time knitting, or I'm going to spend my creative time writing in this story, then I think it is quite possible to do that, to have more than one project to um, work in. And she describes some people who do this monthly. They spend a month on a painting, and then they spend a month on a story, and then they spend a month on creating some other interesting piece of art. Or then they spend a month just traveling because they can't stand creating anything anymore. So I think that kind of, I wouldn't even call it multitasking because it's still single tasking, but with a shifting focus. I
Well,
think that might actually work.
when I talk about moving between projects, I'm talking about the people who are like, yes, in the morning I work on the romantic comedy, and then around lunchtime I spend 2 hours on the erotic horror, and then I work on the cat mystery. And it's like, you're going to get more done if you can focus all of that writing time on one project, because your brain is tough to switch between them.
That is
Uh,
true. And I think if you have switching time in between, like if you take out the dogs between writing the comedy romance and the erotic horror, then it's probably going to work. And I'm not going to condemn anyone who says this is my way of working. But I think we're getting away from finishing.
But yes,
That's fine.
when I did that thing of working 2/3 on something, what I did was I developed the muscle of working on something for 2/3, and then when it got to the hard part, because every part is the hard part, I would go, let's move on to something new. And so there's a fine balance between pushing through that hard part to finish something,
Yes.
and then getting to the point where you're like, okay, B+, that's good enough. That goes out into the world, onto the next thing.
Yes.
And you have to push through that hard part to finish something. And that I spent a long time doing nothing but just writing stuff that I hope no one ever sees, just to finish it.
Yeah.
It actually makes me angry that I managed to get a degree from USC without finishing my sitcom script from the sitcom class. And I managed to get a grade in that class, but I didn't have a finished script. How is that even possible? You know? So the main thing, as I'm going down our list of things to hit here, the main thing that saved me the first time I ever finished something entirely was dun 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 dun. Yes, NaNoWriMo. NaNoWriMo, for those of you who don't know, is National Novel Writing Month, which is actually international now. It started here in the Bay Area, over in Oakland or Berkeley, I believe, with some crazy people who'd said, let's write a novel in a month. And the guy who started it, Chris Beatty, picked a novel off his shelf and said, that's 50,000 words. That's a novel. Okay, let's all write 50,000 words. So National Novel Writing Month. You can look this up at nanowrimo.org, and I'll have that link in the show notes. Is when people get together and write 50,000 words in a month on a single contiguous. It's supposed to be on a single project, and you're supposed to finish it. This is not just 50,000 words. You're supposed to start on day 1 and have a complete novel by day 30. And it is, of course, November, that month when we here in the US are not doing anything, like Thanksgiving. But there was something, the first year I did it, which is over 10 years ago now. The first year I did it, there was, despite the fact that no one's checking, okay, yes, at the end of the month, you submit your book to their checker to see how many words you have. Nobody's checking to make sure that it's beginning to end. Nobody's checking to see if it's coherent. Nobody's even checking to see if there are words in it. You can change every letter in your document to X if you want. They're just checking for number of words. The first time I did it, I finished an entire draft and I went, oh, and then I did it again and again. And now I have built the habit of finishing things. You also have a relationship to NaNoWriMo, I believe.
Oh, definitely. I think I actually started
NaNoWriMo,
it about
in
10
German.
years ago. That's just because I was pronouncing that acronym in a silly German way. You want me to say that in German?
Okay, yes. How would you say National Novel Writing Month in German?
Well, we would still use the English acronym, but it would be NaNoWriMo.
And now you can be one of the cool people and say it that way.
I think it must have been about 10 years ago.
Yeah.
When I did it for the first time, and I have a special trick. I have a calendar that has a beautiful picture and then a month underneath it, so it has little boxes for each day. And what I do is I aim for 2,000 words a day. If you want to finish NaNoWriMo in November, you have to write 1,667 words
per day.
And I think you'll have like 5 words. You're over the limit. But anyway, I have a little spreadsheet for it where I can track my word count. and it's an Excel, and it sort of works automatically. It tells you how far you're in. It adds it all up. It tells you how much you're behind or ahead. I love it. And so I have this calendar. It's there on the wall, and on any given day in NaNoWriMo, when I hit my 2K words goal, I put a little sticker into it, and I use star stickers, but you can use
Yay,
any kind of
stars! Our favorite kind of sticker.
but I use stars because I love stars. And you know what? When those stars start piling up in that calendar, you don't want to miss a day. You really do not.
Uh,
And I
have you ever heard the? I've heard it attributed to Jerry Seinfeld, but the don't break the chain,
mhm.
where somebody said, "How did you get started?" And he said he sits down and writes a joke a day or something, and then he marks the calendar.
Yes.
And when he looks at the calendar, he doesn't want to miss making that X on the calendar. So
Absolutely,
uh,
absolutely.
there are apps on your phone for this too. I can link to those.
Yeah, and I mean, if you, I don't know where you're going to put that. I could actually offer you that file because it's not nothing any. I don't really think it's very special.
No,
It's just a little
people on the
Excel program.
NaNoWriMo boards are always posting fun calendar paper that you can print out. Yeah, that they've decorated
So anyway,
ways. Yeah.
that's certainly. I mean, I think it's a great thing because there's like almost millions in the world doing it. There's usually local meetings. I've been to meetings in my town. I've actually organized some a couple of years ago, and it really helped me to follow through with a novel. I mean, I finished one that was my best novel, the one I like most, and I might actually get it published. It's in German because back then I was with an agent and they had first whatever they would get my novels, and it made sense to keep them in German. And I just had a beta reader go through it and point out a couple of plot errors. And
It's not perfect. Sorry.
no, but it's easy. It's an easy fix. I mean, he's great. It's really just two little things. Like I have this MC who is sort of this earth saving old time, well, hippie. And midway in the story, I give him a coffee machine, and in the end of the story, he no longer has it. And that's kind of like a consistency error. So continuity error. I'm certainly going to fix that. It's easy. Going to take away the coffee machine. But that was the only novel, and I didn't quite finish it in NaNoWriMo, but I reached the 50,000 words on the 25th. I got the 2K every freaking day, and I've never been able to do that again. And I did sit down and finish the story in December, I think. I gave myself a break after that because honestly, if
Yeah,
you're
you
busy, writing 2K a day takes effort.
yes.
It takes dedication, it takes effort. And if you're losing sleep over it, it's getting harder and harder. And I really learned to do my plotting in my downtime and then just sit down and write and do it
Hmm.
in 90 minutes. That's what it usually takes for me. It takes for me to write 2K words. But I need to know what I'm writing in order to write fast, which takes us back to you if you want to. But yeah, I actually think plotting is a good point because NaNoWriMo teaches you to write without plotting.
Without
And
plotting.
yes,
Yeah. Sorry.
Chris,
For some reason, your voice keeps dropping out.
oh, I'm sorry. I'm really trying to speak directly into my microphone.
No, I think there's something. Maybe this won't be happening with when you actually watch the video cast, but our voices and mouth movements don't seem to be lining
Yeah,
up. So
yeah, there seems to be a little discrepancy, but
I'm going to
I
blame
can.
Google on this one.
Um, I mean, Chris Beatty wrote his famous book, No Plot, No Problem, and that's part of what NaNoWriMo is about. You just take an idea and run with it. And some of my good books have come out of it, and some I've written extensively. I mean, one of my Nano projects was a rewrite,
Wow.
which came out a lot better.
Yeah. Well, I don't think anyone should assume, unless you have written a lot and you have a pretty good. Too bad we don't have the explicit filter on this. We don't have, if you don't have what Hemingway called the bleep detector, what you have at the end of NaNoWriMo is not going to be a finished novel, not unless you are some kind of, here comes the German, Wunderkind, or you get lucky. Because you're going to have an unholy mess at the end. It might have a shape. It might be coherent. It might not. I've certainly ended November with some pretty incoherent stuff. But what it does is it forces you to get back to the keyboard every day and finish this story.
Yes.
If you're in the habit of switching halfway through, this is telling you something. A, stop doing that. Finish your stuff. Find an idea at the beginning. Write down what interests you about that idea and post it on your monitor, so that every time you're like, oh, I should go work on something new, you go back and you look at why you're so interested in this idea.
And I mean, I really think it comes back to plotting, and I'm this kind of person. I don't particularly plot, and I'm reading 2K to 10K because it got recommended several times, and when a book gets recommended to me at least 3 times, I kind of go and try it. And Rachel Aaron, really talks about plotting, and she says plotting is what made her be prolific.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I still kind of have a problem plotting my chapters down to the scenes and breaking them all down, and that doesn't really work that well for me. What I do plot is I take a good look at characters, and that takes me back to what I really like about the Plot Whisperer. She has a pretty large section
I'm going to talk about that.
about characters, because it's basically the idea with the Plot Whisperer is that the characters drive the story.
And this is the book by Martha Alderson.
Oh, that's right.
Yes.
This one.
We mentioned it briefly last week, but you didn't discuss what you liked about it so much.
No, I like the part where she goes into character development and actually makes it very clear that both hero and antagonist need to have an agenda. They need to know what they want. They need to know, you as writer need to know what they want, what they hate, what they would kill for, what their conflicts are, what their weak points are, where they have to grow. And this whole background of the characters can actually drive a story. I mean, it could be as simple as the hero and the antagonist wanting the same person, the same woman, the same man. And somehow we're getting an echo in here now.
There's another book, and I will need to read this. Maybe we can do an episode on plotting. That I think Libby Hawker just came out with, called "Take Off Your Pants," in which it's all about outlining and plotting, and why that's important is if you are basically planning on being a professional author, of having of planning out what you're going to release during a year, you have to be able to plan what you're going to write, and you have to know that you're going to get it written. Anyhow, I haven't read it yet, so I can't recommend it. But
I haven't. We can make an episode about that one.
Yes, maybe we could even get her to join us. Yes. So, so the Plot Whisperer, I have to pick that one up too, so I can check it out. I'm always looking for, something that will help me develop my own method of doing it, because there's no one who is going, you can't take anybody's method wholesale.
No.
It won't be your method, but you know, I pick up things here and there. I mentioned this last week, but Sean Coyne on the Story Grid has such a brilliant way of going through and analyzing each scene, how it moves the story forward, what to keep in mind, you know, what you should keep track of in each scene. That I'm like, okay, wow, I totally need to make that part of my process. Yes. Okay.
And there's one component. Diane, do you have a microphone or speakers going on? Because I'm really getting an echo when I talk.
No.
Okay.
Do you hear anything strange when I talk?
No.
Okay.
Well, we'll just take it as it is.
Okay.
So what I also think what makes a good writer is a certain intuition about writing and about how stories flow. And it is trained by reading a lot. I think I talked about that last time. And possibly about inhaling or reading books on writing and picking what resonates with you. I really think that is important. That you develop your own personal intuition for stories.
Well, I think it's important to read them, but I think, let's just say I've known a couple of writers who have substituted reading books on writing for reading novels and for writing their own stuff.
Which is a shame.
Yeah. There's nothing, you know, writing, I think I mentioned this before, but it seemed like every screenwriter I knew who had a big success in Hollywood, I'm not going to drop any names, but I knew a few. They always said, yeah, it was my 9th screenplay that got me the attention. And I was, that's awfully specific. 9th, not, you know, usually we divide things up in 5, 5th or 10th or 9th. And it was, they had developed their muscles to the point where it's like, yeah, I got this, which isn't to say that any particular project is going to be easy, because it never is. I was just reading a rant last night on Twitter from Eric Heiserer, who's on his 51st screenplay, and it's still hard. But he knows what he can do. He knows what he's got. And by the 9th screenplay, the 9th novel, the 9th whatever, you get an idea of how these things are working for you. And you're not going to have that after reading 9 books on writing. You got to actually butt in chair, hands on keyboard, or in my case, feet on treadmill desk, hands on keyboard. Yeah. Finish your stuff and move on to the next one.
Let's have that.
Okay. Okay, so let me just do the finishing here. If you would like to do the tapping along with us, stay right where you are. If you're in a car listening to us, that's it for this week's podcast of the 21st Century Writer. Join us next week when Hannah and Diane discuss, and I have here the writing intuition, what it is, how to develop it, and when to listen to it, and when not to. That's on next week's podcast. Okay, so let me put in a break here for the music. And now, Hannah will do some EFT tapping.
Okay. So what I want you to do is just watch me, and I'm trying to do this in such a good way that I can that you can follow me. And I'm really looking at my video. EFT tapping uses meridian points and words, and I'm just going to model it for you. I'm going to be silent in between so you can repeat my words while you do the tapping on yourself. And I'm not going to explain how it works because, hey, it does. You're starting on the side of the hand. This is called the karate chop point. You just tap it gently. On this side, it doesn't matter. The meridians are on either side of the body. They're symmetrical. So you can tap on this side. So just tap the side of your hand and repeat after me. Even though I have such a hard time finishing my work, I'm a great writer, and I now choose to let go of any fear that's holding me back from finishing. We do this 3 times. Even though it's so hard to finish a story when I lose my interest in it, I'm a good writer. And I now choose to create stories that hold my interest until the very end. Even though it's so hard to stay with a story when it gets difficult. And I always stop at the place where it gets difficult. Usually it's Act 3, second part. But I'm still a good writer. And I now choose to make even the second part of Act 2 so exciting that I can't stop. And I will go into the actual tapping round, which is going to be tapping on parts in your face and your upper body. And I'm going to modify my usual routine and just go to the collarbone points because you can't see the rest. I'm going to leave out a couple of points which won't really make a huge difference in the actual result. The first point is called inner eye. It's where your eyebrow starts, next to the bridge of your nose. And I'm going to tap that with 2 fingers very gently. Don't want you to hurt yourself. And just repeat after me. I have such a hard time finishing a story. The next point is on the outside of the eye. If you imagine a horizontal line through your eyes, it's on that line outside on the bone. Do not hit your eye, please. And again, the tapping phrase is, it's so hard when I reach the second part of Act 2. The next point is directly under your eye, on your cheekbone. And I feel so bad about not being able to finish the story. The next point is under your nose, just between the upper lip and the nose. I feel like I'm such a bad writer when I can't finish a story. Next point is on your chin, just in that groove here. I hate not being able to finish a story. And the last point we're going to use here is the collarbone points, and you just need to find the little bumps of your collarbones and move down 1 finger width. And then you have it. And I use my thumb on one of them, and I use, just jerk up a bit, thumb on one, 2 fingers on the other, using a double-sided grip. And you hit both of them. I feel that I fail as a writer when I can't finish a story. And we go right back to the inner eye point and step into another round. It feels so hard to finish a story. And I wish I could finish a story. But it feels as if my inspiration completely leaves me. I run out of steam when I'm in the second half of Act 2. That's because Act 2 is actually hard to manage. This is where stuff has to happen. And I run out of stuff that can happen. And back to the inner eye point. But maybe I can do things differently. Maybe I can create more stuff. Maybe I can talk to my characters and find out what they need to change. Maybe I can even talk to a writing group and discuss this. Because I would really like to finish my story. It would be awesome to finish a story. And the final round, back to the inner eye point. I now choose to allow myself to finish my stories. I give myself permission to struggle through the hard part and finish it. And I choose to let go of any fear and any doubt that's holding me back. I choose to finish my story now. And this feels wonderful. Take a deep breath. And if you want more tapping and more mindset work, go to writersdreamcoach.com. I post a weekly blog. I have a weekly newsletter with that kind of stuff to help you.